Jen, are you good? Okay, let me just see if we have right audio channel. The microphone is, yeah, everything's good.
Okay. What you say?
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Can we do this all together?
Ram Navasindhya Ram Saiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiyate Namaskar
Before starting the Sri Bhagavatam, which is the very beginning of the conquest, one should all respect the places of the personality of Godhead,
by regular attendance to the classes of the Bhagavatam, and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, whose praise and transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable sound.
Namaste Saraswati Devi Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay. So today we are in chapter 23, this canto, but as I sometimes like to do, I'd like for us to look at the last few verses of the previous chapter, because, you know, the chapters flow into each other, and we just want to remind ourselves of the context of it. You can go down more. I've read at the end, really. Let's see, okay? Yeah, maybe there. Okay, let's read those. And I don't think we read these in yesterday's class, so it's actually good that we take a quick look. I'll just read them. Even though neglected, insulted, ridiculed, or envied by bad men, or even though repeatedly agitated by being beaten, tied up, or deprived of one's occupation, spat upon or polluted with urine by ignorant people, one who desires the highest goal in life should, in spite of all these difficulties, use his intelligence to keep himself safe on the spiritual platform. Sri Uddhava said, "Oh, best of all speakers, please explain to me how I may properly understand this. O soul of the universe, the conditioning of one's personality in material life is very strong, and therefore it is very difficult even for learned men to tolerate the offenses committed against them by ignorant people. Only your devotees who are fixed in your loving service and who have achieved peace by residing at your lotus feet are able to tolerate such offenses." If you can remember yesterday's chapter, it was all about the difference between spirit and matter, our soul and the material energy around us, and becoming aware of that difference and moving towards understanding that. And then Krishna basically says that if you stay conditioned and if you keep identifying with your material body, material ego, it'll be very difficult for you to tolerate these slights that are coming from others. But yet Krishna is saying it's very essential to be able to do that if you want to keep making spiritual progress. Okay, so to illustrate the importance of this point, then Krishna narrates the story, the song of the Avanti Brahmana. So let's see what this is all about. So we can start with text 1, maybe from a paper, and we're going to read all the way to 22.
Skip the thing.
Yeah, so it's better if you have the other one open where it's all the verses below each other. So just go to the top of this. Just go to the top of this. find feedback, so another microphone. Just click on chapter. Why is it not there? At the top, there should be an option to click chapter 23. Or just hit back.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, that's correct.
Shri Goswami said, Lord Mukunda, the chief of the Dasharas, having thus been respectfully requested by the best of his devotees, Sri Uddhava, first acknowledged the fitness of his servant's statements. Then the Lord, whose glorious exploits are most worthy of being heard, began to reply to him.
Okay, Robert, that's 2.
Lord Sri Krishna says, O disciple of Brahaspati, there is virtually no saintly man in this world capable of resettling his own mind after it has been disturbed by the insulting words of uncivilized men.
Wow, very difficult.
Sharp arrows which pierce one's chest and reach the heart do not cause as much suffering as the arrows of harsh, insulting words that become lodged within the heart when spoken by uncivilized men.
My dear Kavita, in this regard, a most pious story is told, and I shall now describe it to you. Please listen with careful attention.
Once a certain Samantha was insulted in many ways by impious men. However, during which he remembered that he was suffering the fruit of his own previous karma. I will narrate to you his story and that which he spoke.
In country of Avanti, there once lived a certain brahmana who was very rich and gifted with all opulences, and who was engaged in the occupation of commerce. But he was a very miserly person, lusty, greedy, and very prone to anger.
In his home, devoid of religiosity and love of sense gratification, the family members and guests were never properly respected, even with words. He would not even allow sufficient gratification for his own body at the suitable times.
Since he was so hard-hearted and miserly, his sons, in-laws, wife, daughters, and servants began to feel inimical toward him. Becoming disgusted, they would never treat him with affection.
This way, the presiding deity.
Can you use
In this way, the presiding deities of the 5 family sacrifices became angry at the Brahmana, who being Yaksha, who had no good destination either in this world or the next, and who was totally deprived from religiosity and sense enjoyment. I'm sorry, what is that word?
Yeah, so I actually looked up the etymology of this word. It comes from Norse, so it's not the same as the other word, which comes from Spanish, meaning black. This word is just, it means miserly. It's just the same as miserly. There's been some incidents in our recent times are very politically tense times where people have gotten in trouble for using this word and others misunderstood. This is an archaic word that means miserly. Who's next?
Manius of Buddha, by his neglect of these demigods, he depleted his stock of piety and all his wealth. The accumulation of his depleted, exhausted endeavors was totally lost.
Some of the wealth of the so-called Brahmana was taken away by his relatives, my dear Uddhava, some by thieves, some by the whims of providence, and some by the effects of time, some by ordinary men, and some by government authorities.
Finally, when his property was completely lost, he who never engaged in religiosity or sense enjoyment became ignored by his family members. Thus he began to feel unbearable anxiety.
It's 13.
Having lost all his wealth, he felt great pain and lamentation. His throat choked up with tears, and he meditated for a long time on his fortune. Then a powerful feeling of renunciation came over him.
Brahman spoke as follows. Oh, what great misfortune! I have simply tormented myself uselessly, struggling so hard for money that was not even intended for the religiosity or material enjoyment.
Surely the wealth of misers never allows any happiness in this life. It causes their self-torment, and when they die, it sends them to hell.
Whatever pure fame is possessed by the famous, and whatever praiseworthy qualities are found in the virtuous, are destroyed by even a small amount of greed. Just as one's attractive physical beauty is ruined by a trace of white leprosy.
In the earning, attainment, increase, protection, expense, loss, and enjoyment of wealth, all men experience great labor, fear, anxiety, and delusion.
Theft, violence, speaking lies, duplicity, lust, anger, perplexity, pride, quarreling, and enmity, faithlessness, envy, and the dangers caused by women, gambling, and intoxication are the 15 undesirable qualities that contaminate men because of greed for wealth. Although these qualities are undesirable, men falsely ascribe value to them. One desiring to achieve the real benefit of life should therefore remain aloof from undesirable material wealth.
Even a man's brothers, wife, parents, and friends united with him in love will immediately break off their affectionate relationships and become enemies over a single coin.
For even a small amount of money, these relations become very agitated. After the virus, they quickly give up all sentiments of goodwill and will reject one at a moment's notice, even to the point of completely better.
Last one. Obtain human life, which is prayed for even by the demigods, and in that human birth become situated as first-class Brahmins, are extremely fortunate. If they disregard this important opportunity, they are certainly killing their own self-interest and thus achieve a most unfortunate end.
Okay. So again, just a quick summary. In the previous chapter, Krishna was saying you really need to be able to tolerate insults from others. That's what happens. That's a sign of your advancement, that you're no longer identifying so much with matter. Then Krishna narrates this story. Now we haven't quite yet seen how this Brahmana is going to tolerate negativity from others. We'll see that tomorrow. I don't want to spoil too much. But we just got his backstory for now. So he's a Brahmana though. So he got to this point of being renounced, but only after some very unfortunate events. He's a Brahmana, but he was filled with so much greed, anger, lust, didn't treat his family members nicely. So why is that happening? So we're quickly going to look at the purport for text 11 to get some insight. So let's go straight to the purport. So it appears that even though the so-called Brahmana, there's the keyword, so-called Brahmana, was determined not to spend his money, his wife and other relatives managed to squeeze out a portion. According to Srila Shivra Swami, Providence, which is mentioned in this verse, here refers to fires in the home and other types of occasional misfortune. Effects of time here refers to the destruction of agricultural crops through seasonal irregularities and other such occurrences. Okay, here's the important one. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur points out that one should not merely proclaim oneself to be a Brahmana, but should actually understand one's original identity as a servant of the Lord. One declaring himself to be a Brahmana but maintaining a materialistic mentality is not a real Brahmana, but rather a Brahma Bandhu, or so-called Brahmana. The humble devotees of Lord Vishnu, following the indications of the Vedic scriptures, refer to themselves as unfortunate and unable to understand the kingdom of God. They do not proudly proclaim themselves to be brahmanas. Those who are wise, however, know that such humble devotees are actually brahmanas, whose hearts are cleansed by the pure love of goodness. So this brahmana ended up in a position of renunciation, but he took quite a tricky route to get there, which I would not recommend. Why was it such a tricky route? Because he was misusing his spiritual position, right? And at the end of the day, he was really just a brahmana in name only, while being focused on very materialistic pursuits, which then led to so many bad qualities coming up in his heart. So there are parallels between us and this brahmana. He went through his training, his brahminical training, and all of us are basically doing the same. We're in a temple. We're in a temple right now, learning about spiritual science. Prabhupada said he created ISKCON so that he could create a society of brahmanas, so that he can create a priestly class. You're all basically supposed to be brahmanas, right? So there are parallels between us and this Avanti Brahmana, but we can learn a lot from him about what not to do. So he misused his spiritual position, and we have to be very careful not to do the same. We have to make proper use of the opportunity that's in front of us. So now let's quickly analyze. He arrived at renunciation, and I said he took a little bit of a risky route. So in my estimation, you could say that there are two ways to get towards a position of renunciation. There are two different motivations that get you there. So the first type, in Sanskrit, they call it bhoga and tyaga. What does bhoga mean? Anyone recognize that word? Maybe something related to Nanda? Okay, it means enjoyment, but what's in the blue cooler? It's not offered, so it's bhoga. It's called unoffered food. So that's where we sometimes hear this word bhoga. But we can also translate it as sense gratification. So then there's what's called bhoga and tyaga. The living entity goes from sense gratification to renunciation. Why? Why does he go from one to the other? Because the sense gratification is actually quite frustrating. It's quite frustrating. But it's very risky because it's like a pendulum. It's always swinging back and forth. Bhoga, tyaga, bhoga, tyaga. Sense gratification, very frustrating. Then the living entity renounces, but then they get lured back to sense gratification. This brahmana, you could argue, is kind of lucky. And it's explained in some of the purports. It's really because he did have some pure motivations when he was earlier, before he became so greedy. Earlier in his brahminical training, he had some pure motivations. So because of that, when he was in difficult times, he could go deeper to a stage of real transcendental realization. And he's lucky in one sense that that happened to him. Most living entities are stuck, just swinging with this pendulum between sense gratification and renunciation. And we can see that he had to burn his hand in the fire, really, before he got it, right? Don't we want to avoid that? Again, we're making parallels between our path and his path, and we're learning from him what not to do. It would be better if we can avoid having to burn our hands so severely before we gain some spiritual realizations, right? So you can choose who's going to be your teacher. Is it going to be Bhakti Devi or Maya Devi? So those are actually both, you can say, the same personality or different expansions of the original Supreme Goddess Radharani. Bhakti Devi is, of course, the presiding deity of the internal energy, the spiritual energy. And that's what we're trying to do right now. We're trying to learn from Bhakti Devi. We're on this path of Bhakti, and it softens the heart. And when the heart softens, that's when real transformation takes place, right? So do we want to learn from Bhakti Devi, or Maya Devi, also feminine energy, but appearing in the form of this prison house, as Prabhu said, Durga, a place that's very difficult to escape. Do we want to be here in the prison house where there's some tougher lessons, the school of hard knocks? You have to choose. So, again, looking at the Brahmana, what do we have to learn from him? The purport said he was acting as a Brahma Bandhu. So be careful that our spiritual practice doesn't just become another designation, another opportunity to bolster up our false ego, right? Oh yeah, I'm so spiritual. I'm better than all those karmis out there. I'm doing something really special. My spiritual life is amazing. I'm so unique. I'm an indigo child. Whatever it might be. There are so many designations we can attach to our spiritual practice. But the moment you do that, the moment you attach some designation and give some opportunity for the false ego to attach itself, then you've kind of missed the point, right? Isn't it? So we've talked about the first catalyst onto renunciation. And what is it really? It's really pain, you could say. Because it's the sense gratification and then the pain that comes from not only the dissatisfaction with that sense gratification, but also the reactions that come. That Durga Devi, Maya Devi slapping us, it's pain. So pain can lead to renunciation. And if we can use an analogy, the other day Advaita Prabhu was speaking about the monkey. I don't know who can remember that. The monkey wants to get the roasted banana that's inside the pot. And when his hand is open, he can go in, but once he's grabbed the banana, it can't get out again. And that's how the hunter catches him. So let's take this story further. Let's say maybe there was a monkey family, and the young monkey saw their mother being killed by the hunter. And it causes so much pain. And then maybe in that way they could learn, okay, stay away from that pot, even though there's roast banana. It really causes a lot of suffering. But there's a second type of renunciation, or a second path onto renunciation. What's that? Any ideas? Becoming attached to Krishna, getting something better. So maybe the monkey in the scenario could also let go of the roast banana if they could just maybe look up in the tree and see that there's a whole variety of fruits right above on the branch just above them. So that's the second way of renouncing. Higher taste, right? When you can approach this spiritual path with the right intentions, the right mood, right motivations, and then you actually receive some jewels. You receive something amazing. And that also then automatically leads to renunciation, a much more sustainable and pain-free path onto renunciation. And what is that something better that you get? So we call it rasa. Rasa. I've thrown this word around a little bit sometimes when commenting during other speakers' Bhagavatam classes over the last few weeks. What the heck is this rasa? I'm sure it's a word we've heard, but I'm sure some of you don't really actually know. You're not sure what it is. Before I say anything, does anyone want to try and be brave and give us a definition for rasa?
It takes a while to understand.
Okay, so for Gopal Prabhu says it takes a while to understand what rasa is. So it's actually quite a mystical thing. Prabhu, you want to try and give a definition?
Yeah, I like this one. It's the essence of everything.
The essence of everything. Wow. Okay.
Prabhupada translated it as mellow.
Right. Prabhupada translated it as the English word mellow, because that's how his guru translated it. Some translations say some sort of taste. Some even say some juice. Okay.
No, I think
We're.
no might be dangerous.
Oh, really? If you could go to that preface for the Nectar of Devotion, here Prabhupada is going to speak a little bit about, so search, hit Control F and search for every service has some. Oh, there already. So we'll just read this paragraph. Okay, please read along with me. And pay careful attention, this is very, very powerful. Okay. Bhakti means devotional service. Every service has some attractive feature which drives the servitor progressively on and on. Every one of us within this world is perpetually engaged in some sort of service, and the impetus for such service is the pleasure we derive from it. Driven by affection for his wife and children, a family man works day and night. A philanthropist works in the same way for love of the greater family, and a nationalist for the cause of his country and countrymen. That force that drives the philanthropist, the householder, and the nationalist is called rasa, or a kind of mellow or relationship whose taste is very sweet. Okay. We'll just stop there. So that gives you a good idea of what rasa is, right? So even before we get to spiritual life, we're pursuing some sort of rasa. But remember the pendulum swinging, sense gratification and then renunciation. Why does it swing back from renunciation to sense gratification? Because we always need to try and find ras. So, you renounce in that first path to renunciation. You renounce, but then you're still unfulfilled. So only when you renounce and there's some deeper rasa, that's that higher taste, that's that better thing that you receive. It's the rasa. We need some deeper rasa. So this nectar of devotion, where this is from, its Sanskrit name is Bhakti Ras Amrita Sindhu. See, did you notice the word rasa in there? Bhakti Rasa Amrita Sindhu. What does this mean? Prabhupada gave a very nice, very practical translation as the nectar of devotion. But you can give a broader, you can analyze it more and give a broader definition if you'd like. So bhakti, we know what that means, devotional service to Krishna. So bhakti rasa amrita. So rasa is now this taste we get from serving others and from the relationship. But rasa amrita, what's amrita? Amrita it's like a nectar, it's like a divine drink. It also means, you can also say the nectar of immortality. So it's something that's eternal. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. This rasa we just read about, it's not that fulfilling, it's kind of temporary. But bhakti rasa is an amrita. It's eternal and it's always deepening and deepening. And then the last word is sindhu. Within bhakti, there's a whole ocean of this rasa amrita. So if we want a rasa that's deeper, what's better than a whole ocean of rasa? That's pretty deep, right? How deep is what's it called? The Mariana Trench or something like that. Deep. So, and then it's amazing in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in the Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami goes on to explain a whole metaphor of this ocean of devotion with all the rasa inside of it. And he says there are jewels, but they're usually at the bottom of the ocean, right? So you have to dive. You have to dive and find them. You have to explore. So it's this deep rasa that gives us that higher taste, that allows us to let go and truly renounce in a deeper way. So the monkey can let go of the banana if it has even better fruits. So we get this higher taste. But now I'm moving on to my next point that's very important. You need to act upon that higher taste. You need to reciprocate with Krishna and reciprocate with this path of devotional service. Reciprocate with Bhakti Devi. That higher taste should actually then lead you to fuller absorption and fuller surrender. The higher taste is not the end of the road. The higher taste is just some tool, you could say, or some step in the process that's supposed to lead you on further and further towards the real goal, which is full surrender and full absorption in your Krishna consciousness. You can't stand still, right? The world is turning, right? So if you're not moving, the world will move you. And unfortunately, it usually moves you backwards. Or like a treadmill, if you can't just stand on the treadmill, you'll go backwards. Or like a river. If you just walk into a river, you have to swim, otherwise the river will carry you away. Or again, to use this ocean metaphor, don't just swim in the shallow waters, you have to go deep into the ocean. So the point is we have to put in some effort. When we experience this higher pace within our spiritual practice, that should be an impetus to explore more and go deeper. We should reach the stage of full absorption. There's the comfort zone that we've all heard of. Then there's breaking point. And somewhere in between is the stretch zone. And of course, we shouldn't take ourselves towards some sort of breaking point. We have to be very careful, very expert, and take care of ourselves, our physical, mental, emotional well-being. And we shouldn't take up so much service that it basically harms us. But at the same time, we shouldn't remain in the comfort zone. We should always be in that stretch zone. And if you're not in that stretch zone, ladies and gentlemen, I think then we're in trouble. The current will just take you. The current of this world will take you. So now I have some challenging questions for all of you. When last did you go a full day engaged in Krishna service, where you did nothing else? From the moment you woke up till you hit the pillow at the end of the night, there was just sadhana and service. Has anyone done that? Raise your hand if you've done that in this lifetime. Okay? No? So we've experienced that? Okay, so that's one day. What about 1 week? What about, okay, we had a hand for 1 week. And then what about 1 month? So I'd like to share a little story, and this is so precarious what I'm doing because it's going to sound like I'm boasting. So please forgive me, but I'm coming from a very sincere place, and I'm hoping that this will be something nice to hear and it will be inspirational. I don't know if all of you have heard about what they call the Christmas marathon in the world of book distribution. In December, a lot of temples all around the world host and then devotees participate in the Christmas marathon. In many places around the world, it's like a vacation time. So devotees that are even those working or studying might have some free time. And then some devotees try and participate for the whole month of December to distribute as many books as they can. And then others, according to their capacity and their responsibilities they might have, others participate on weekends during December or just do as much as they can. So I'm lucky. I feel very fortunate that I've had some years in my life where I went to the temple that was closest to me, and I lived there for the full month. And every day I would distribute books. There was a very nice devotee. Me and him cultivated a very deep friendship over these times, because me and him would kind of team up, and we would rush out the temple as soon as the morning program was over, and we would come back very late. We would be out for about 10 or 11 hours every day. And the center of the city where we distributed was a little far from the temple, so we had to take a train ride. So I didn't want to come back to waste time, so I would take as many books as I could. My backpack would be like, I don't know, many, many pounds. But we became fully absorbed in the service. 10 or 11 hours on your feet, speaking with people, probably thousands of people within that day. Somehow it wasn't tiring. And what I really want to tell you is that those efforts I made, I would say they still drive my spiritual life even today. For a few years now, I haven't really participated in the Christmas marathon. Of course, there was COVID and all that stuff. But these are efforts I made years ago. But like every day I wake up, I have a tangible experience of how that little bit of push that I made, that effort I put in, is driving my spiritual life, even as I sit here right now. Now I have this Purushottama month, for example. Again, I hope I'm not oversharing. They say you shouldn't share your goals during these sacred times. They actually say everyone you share it with will also get benefits. So I guess that's a good thing. But during this Purushottama month, I'm gonna try. My goal is to try and go out onto the streets every day to distribute some books. Now, I have many other responsibilities, so it wouldn't be wise to say to myself, okay, I'm gonna do 1 hour every day, or I'm gonna be out there until I've done 20 books. No, I'm just gonna go out and make sure I speak to at least one person. That's manageable. But the point is, we have to do something. We have to have some sort of excitement to, as I said, when you experience this higher taste Krishna is giving you, you should have some curiosity. We should try and reciprocate with Krishna and decide, okay, let's move towards full absorption, full surrender. Of course, we can't do that tomorrow. We can't just do a full day of Krishna consciousness tomorrow, and then another one, and then another one, then a month, then we've done a whole year. Like, it takes time to get there, but start thinking about it. Start making some efforts to show Krishna, I'm trying to surrender. I'm trying to be fully absorbed. Okay, so I was hoping that some of you might, oh, we're really not doing well on time. So I had too much that I wanted to share today. Okay, I'll quickly just summarize where we're at right now. We heard about this brahmana who achieved a very deep sense of renunciation. But in my opinion, a little bit of a risky path that he took to get there, having to be burnt by the material energy first. Rather interact with the higher taste that Krishna has given us, and let that just automatically make you renounce all these other things. But we want to have more and more experiences of higher taste. And to do that, we have to really apply ourselves to try and be more fully surrendered, fully absorbed. Okay, now the final thing I'd like to share is, if you can imagine that full surrender, full absorption is the goal we want to go to. I imagine it's like a mountain. We're going to go hiking. And when you go hiking, you have to pack certain things. I think when you go hiking in the northern parts of America, you have to have bear spray, for example. Otherwise, you might die. Right? So, what do we have to pack when we're trying to march towards full absorption and full surrender? So there's many things you could pack. This philosophy, this lifestyle is very deep, very multifaceted. But there are 3 things that I came up with that I want to share. The first thing you should pack is a mentality and a mood. The second thing is persons and connections to persons. And the third thing is the mission, the spirit of the mission. Okay, now we're going to quickly look at each one. The first one is the mentality or the mood. If you want to be fully absorbed and fully surrendered, what mood should you carry with you? Lord Chaitanya gave some instructions to Raghunath Das Goswami. Who is Raghunath Das Goswami? We could speak about him for a long time, but for now I'll just say he was the Prayojana Acharya. Acharya is one who teaches by their example. So he was appointed by Lord Chaitanya to teach us about Prayojana. Prayojana is the ultimate goal. It's basically what we're talking about here. Full surrender, full absorption. The end goal of our whole spiritual life. So Raghunath Das Goswami is the one who's supposed to teach us about this. And then Lord Chaitanya gives him some instructions. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya Lila 6.237, he says to Raghunath, do not expect honor, but offer all respects to others. Always chant the holy name of Lord Krishna, and within your mind, render service to Radha, Krishna, and Vrindavan. So Lord Chaitanya is basically saying, if you want to achieve this state where you're always in your mind, rendering service to Krishna, so basically internally always absorbed, and you're always chanting. If you want to achieve this, then do not expect honor and offer all respects to others. Just a few verses later, Lord Chaitanya speaks a verse you might recognize. It starts with Tanadati. So he says to Raghunath Das Goswami, one who thinks himself lower than grass, who is more tolerant than a tree, and who does not expect personal honor, but is always ready to give respects to others. That person can very easily chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. So chanting the holy name of the Lord constantly, that's full absorption. That's this level we're talking about. But you can only do that if you think yourself lower than the grass and more tolerant than the tree. So that's the mentality and the mood that you have to pack in your little backpack when you're trying to approach full absorption. Why? Why is this mentality recommended? The ultimate answer is because it situates us in reality. If you struggle to tolerate what others are doing to you and you just get caught up in, oh, this person said this one did that to me, and instead of just being humble, just tolerate it, if you get absorbed in it, you're getting absorbed in some temporary material happening that has no real bearing on the soul. Your soul can't be harmed, right? So when you become truly humble, it's almost like you shift your gaze. You were so focused on your little experience here in the material world and everything that's happening to you that's so bad. But now you shift your gaze and you're looking towards Krishna. You're looking towards the real reality, the spiritual reality. Krishna's Leela, Krishna's devotees, the service to Krishna. That's also happening right here in front of us, right? You have to be humble, you have to tolerate. Only then will you truly be able to focus on that spiritual reality. Okay, so that's the first one. Humility, the mood. Then the next thing I said is persons. You need to have persons. You need to pack some persons in your bag. So remember, rasa is the thing that drives us and that can take us to that ultimate goal. But rasa, real rasa comes from relationships with people. I was telling Mita the other day, it's really when you try and serve a person that you can achieve a real deep sense of satisfaction. There are these three aspects of this absolute truth. I don't know if you've all heard of it. Sat, Chit, Ananda. Right? What is Sat? What is Sat? Eternality. Chit, knowledge. And Ananda, we know that one. Bliss. So Sat, Chit, Ananda, these three aspects of the absolute truth, they correspond to different manifestations of the Supreme. Sat corresponds to brahman, just the spiritual energy. Chit, knowledge, corresponds to the super soul, Paramatma. And what does Ananda correspond to? Bhagavan, the Supreme Person. So again, when you connect with a person, when there's a relationship and you try and satisfy the other person's desires, that's where Ananda, that's where real bliss comes from. That's where real rasa comes from. So persons, you need to be connected to persons. Listen to what Prabhupada said in one letter. Of course, you cannot surrender until you love. For instance, you are surrendered to me, even though I am not from your country. Because you have love for me, you surrender. If I say do this, you'll do it. Why? Because you love me. So when will there be surrender to God? When one loves God. So when you have that relationship with an actual person. And Prabhupada points out in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 4 that we've become kind of traumatized by the idea of personalities and personhood. Because in this material world, we have negative experiences in our relationships. And then we're a little traumatized, and then we try and get away from personhood. That's what impersonalist philosophy is. That's the jiva's attempt to just, I just want nothingness so that I can finally be peaceful. But that's not really the full picture. The real reason we suffer is because of our own, foolish endeavors. We can't get away from personhood. It's the only thing that can really give us bliss is contact with other personalities, of course, especially the Supreme Personality. And then, of course, we need persons because sadhusanga is an association with devotees is what starts off our spiritual life. It gives us real fuel for our spiritual lives. And it's also what gives us taste. We've been talking about taste. Prabhupada says in one purport, we have already discussed developing a taste for hearing and chanting the holy sound. It is done through the medium of service to the pure devotee of the Lord. So we need persons. Okay, so what have we packed so far? Which one? The mood and the mentality, humility, and then persons. And the last one is mission. I'm sorry, I'm really going over time, but this is my favorite part of the class, so please bear with me. So we have to know that there's a mission going on. And if we understand that mission and connect to that mission, then we can really become fully absorbed. So I'm going to read you something. We don't always hear so much about Prabhupada's life before he came to America. This devotee did a really nice job. Mula Prakriti Devi Dasi. She realized that there's some amazing knowledge that should be gathered before it's too late. So she went to India and interviewed many different devotees and personalities that had contact with Prabhupada before he came to America. So Prabhupada, was he just this Grihastha kind of doing his duties? And his guru gave him an order and he was like, okay, yeah. And then he just lived his Grihastha life. And then at some point he was like, okay, let's do what my guru said. Not really. It was a whole lifetime preparation. Prabhupada was really focused on the mission that he had inherited from his guru. And focusing on that mission is what gave him full absorption and full surrender. So please listen carefully. I'm just going to read two quick sections. So the first one, this is when Prabhupada was living at the Radha Damodar temple. So Shripad Hitayananda Babaji Maharaj was interviewed. He said, okay, at the beginning of the interview, upon being asked if he knew Srila Prabhupada, Babaji Maharaj began to cry. Never have I seen anyone do sadhana like he did. I have lived all my life in Braja and I have never seen anyone like him. Prabhupada did many arduous things. He worked very hard there at the Radha Damodar temple. At that time, it was austere, undeveloped, and very muddy and dirty with no facilities. Weeping, Babaji Maharaj quoted a shloka from Chaitanya Charitamrita from Sanatana Goswami about the importance of sadhana. Without sadhana, one can never attain Krishna prema. Many years later, when I heard that it was actually he who had been chosen by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to spread the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra around the world, I was not surprised. Prabhupada spread this Krishna consciousness by the mercy of Rupa Goswami. Prabhupada used to pray to Rupa Goswami, you please give me your mercy. And then he got that mercy. I know this because I saw some things he did at the Radha Damodar temple. My room is still located in the same place as it was then in 1964 or 65. Many times in the middle of the night, at midnight or 1 or 2 in the morning, I would hear a voice crying from inside the courtyard by Rupa Goswami's Samadhi Mandir. That voice was calling out and crying, but I did not know what it was because I was trying to take rest. But one night on the full moon, I heard that voice again, so I climbed up to the roof of our house and looked down into the Radha Damodar courtyard. I saw something very amazing. Srila Prabhupada was sweeping the courtyard of Rupa Goswami's Samadhi. He was bending down with a small broom, and as he swept the ground by the Samadhi, he was crying out, Hey Rupa, hey Sanatana, hey Gurudeva, please give me your mercy. Without your mercy, I cannot do anything. Give me the mercy, give me the strength that I may fulfill your orders. Then I realized that it was he who almost every night was calling out as he was sleeping like this. Okay, so can you see how focused Prabhupada is on the mission and the level of sadhana and absorption it brought? Okay, one more excerpt. Sorry for taking so much of your time. So, just recently an amazing realization occurred to me that I wanted to share with devotees everywhere. So this is a random Indian devotee that came to Mayapur at one point and wanted to share the story. I have been the Pujari and Sevite at the house of Advaita Acharya for many years. I was also there back in the 1940s and 50s. At that time, I noticed that one Grihastha Bengali devotee used to come to the temple quite regularly. He was dressed in a white khadi dhoti and kurta, and he always came alone. So this is in the 40s and 50s, right? Prabhupada was doing his household duties, but he was using a lot of his free time to be very fully absorbed. Okay, so he would sit at the back of the mandir without speaking, and he would chant Harinam on his mala very quietly and deeply. I noticed that he came on the weekends, usually once every month or 2 in a regular way. After chanting there for many hours, he always thanked me when he left. His presence was profound, and I became attracted to him. Since his devotions were solitary, I never spoke to disturb him. Sometimes I happened to notice that while he was chanting, his eyes would be full of tears and his voice would be choked up. Then, for a very long time, he did not come. However, I distinctly recall that in August of 1965, I saw a saffron-clothed sannyasi sitting in the back of the mandir. In a moment, I recognized him to be my old friend from before. Again, he sat for a long time chanting Hare Krishna. I could see his beads moving, his eyes closed in concentrated devotion. He He was weeping unabashedly, even more than he used to while he took the holy name. Finally, as evening came, he paid his Dandavat Pranam for a long time. When he arose, he came up to me and again thanked me for my seva here at Dvaita Bhavana. I asked him, "Who are you? I remember you from so long ago." He replied, "My name is Abhaya Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj. I am an unworthy disciple of His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada, my Divine Master. I have been coming here for such a long time because my Gurudeva has given me an impossible mission. His desire was for me to go across the ocean to the Western countries and spread the sublime teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There are countless souls there who have never heard of Sri Radha Krishna, and so they are suffering greatly. I have not known how this mission of his will be successful, so I've been coming here to this special house of Advaita Acharya, where he, Nityananda Prabhu, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would gather together to plan the Sankirtan movement. It was here that they launched the inundation of love of God that swept India and continues to this day. Thus, I have been praying very earnestly here that they will all give me their mercy, that somehow they will empower me and guide me. I want to satisfy my Gurudeva's desire, but I'm feeling unqualified to do this. As he was speaking to me, I saw tears falling down on his cheeks again. Then he continued, "Tomorrow I'm leaving for Kolkata to go on a ship across the ocean to America. I do not know what will befall me there, but I'm praying most earnestly here for help." Then he very humbly asked me for my blessings. I was indeed moved by this Vaishnava's sincerity and determination as I watched him depart upon the journey. It was a few years later that I began noticing for the first time white Vaishnavas coming to Advaita Bhavana. They were wearing dhotis and saris and chanting on Tulsi Mala. I never spoke to any of them, but then one of them gave me this Back to Godhead magazine from America. As I was looking at the photographs, suddenly I recognized the painting of the founder Acharya, who had brought Krishna consciousness to the West. It was a picture of my friend, Bhaktivedanta Swami. So then I realized I'd actually accomplished that impossible mission of his Gurudev. It was he, starting alone and without pretense, who had accomplished this glorious miracle against all odds. So, we have this amazing example of Srila Prabhupada focusing on the mission and getting full absorption. So the summary for this class is there's a great opportunity in front of us, and we can achieve real renunciation and we can make spiritual advancement. We should not be brahman bandhus, just take it cheaply and just see it as another designation of kind of spiritualism. We should enter deeply and reciprocate with that higher taste that Krishna is giving us. And we should aim for full absorption. And if we have the right mentality, and if we connect with persons and try and please them, and if we see that there's a mission going on, we all have a very important part to play, then we can achieve that full absorption. I'm really sorry, I feel quite rude that I didn't time everything nicely, so I don't know if there's time for questions and answers. I don't know. Not that? Okay. Sorry so much, but if you have any questions, maybe we can scoot over to start. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Sade Govind. Maha Prasad ki. Oh.